My name is George Walker, and I never thought a simple visit to see my son could unravel everything I thought I knew about family. It was a blistering morning in Dallas, Texas, the kind of summer day that reminded you the world keeps spinning whether you're ready for it or not. My office, once a sanctuary, now felt like a tomb. All those years building Walker Freight Solutions, and now my biggest client had just dropped us. The coffee in my mug was cold, the papers on my desk no longer made sense. For the first time in decades, I felt every one of my 69 years. The phone rang. I nearly let it go to voicemail. But the caller ID stopped me cold. Ethan Walker. My son. We hadn't spoken in 3 years, not since our last fight. I hesitated, heart pounding, then answered. Hey, Dad. His voice sounded softer than I remembered. Look, I know it's been a while. But Lily and I would really like to have you over for dinner. We've missed you. I glanced at a photo of my late wife, Ruth, who always said I was too stubborn for my own good. This was her chance for us to finally fix things. Sure, Ethan, I managed. When should I come by? How about Friday? He said. We just moved to River Oaks, Houston, actually. It's a great neighborhood. You'll love it. I promised I'd be there. That night, as I packed my suitcase, I pulled out the gold watch I'd saved for a special day, a gift for Ethan. For Lily, my daughter-in-law, I chose a sapphire necklace Ruth had loved. Keep family close, Ruth used to say. As I packed, I felt hopeful for the first time in months. The next morning, I loaded my old Lincoln Town car and started the long drive south. The Texas highway stretched before me, the sun burning away my worries as miles fell behind. I remembered road trips with Ethan as a boy, the endless questions, the laughter, the fights that never lasted more than a day. By early afternoon, the Houston skyline came into view. The city shimmered in the heat. I pulled off the interstate and followed Ethan's directions through tree-lined streets, the houses growing bigger, the lawns greener with every turn. This wasn't the world I'd known. Ethan had done well for himself. I pulled up to a white modern home, a fountain burbling in the driveway, security cameras watching from every corner. My car looked out of place beside a row of black Mercedes. Heart pounding, I climbed the steps and rang the doorbell. The melody echoed, cheerful and expensive. I waited. No one answered. I tried again, then knocked hard enough to rattle the brass knocker. Still nothing. My palms grew damp as I checked my watch, 3:30, exactly as planned. I tried Ethan's number. Straight to voicemail. Lily's, too. I stood awkwardly on the doorstep, clutching the gift bags, feeling more foolish with every passing minute. The street was eerily quiet except for the distant whir of a gardener's leaf blower. After 20 minutes, I circled the house, peering through tall windows into a home that looked like something out of a magazine, sleek, cold, and completely empty. Had I gotten the date wrong? Had I misunderstood Ethan's invitation? Or was this some cruel joke? Sweat trickled down my back. The Texas heat was relentless. I sat on the stone steps, my hope draining away with the daylight. Just then, a neighbor, thin, middle-aged, in a Houston Astros cap, approached with a hedge trimmer. Sir, you need to leave, now, he said, glancing nervously at Ethan's house. I shouldn't even be talking to you, but you look like a good man. Please, get in your car and go. I stared at him, confused. Excuse me? This is my son's house. His face went pale. That's even worse. Your son and his wife, they're not who you think they are. There's a reason nobody stays long in that house. Ask the neighbors, ask anyone. Bad things happen to people who get too close. I wanted to laugh, to tell him he was crazy. But the fear in his eyes made my own heart race. Sir, please. You need to leave before it's too late. He backed away, disappearing behind a hedge, leaving me alone in the suffocating silence. I stared at the heavy front door, at my reflection in the glass. Was I just an old fool who didn't know when to quit? Or was there really something I needed to be afraid of? As I stood there, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I fumbled to answer, hoping, praying, it was Ethan calling me in at last. But the number was blocked. And that was only the beginning. I stood there for another long minute, clutching the gift bags, the words of the stranger echoing in my mind. The Houston sun glared down, unforgiving. I tried to shake off the unease, telling myself it was just neighborly gossip. But my hands trembled as I fished for my phone, trying Ethan again. Voicemail. Again. I checked the address, right street, right number. Maybe they were delayed by Houston traffic, maybe just running late. But why not answer their phones? After another 15 minutes, with the house looming behind me like a fortress, I sat on the curb beside my old Lincoln, trying to collect my thoughts. The neighborhood seemed picture perfect, but there was an unnatural stillness, a kind of wealth that builds walls as much as it builds homes. A security patrol car crawled down the street, the officer inside watching me with suspicion. I gave a polite nod, feeling more like an intruder than a guest. Just then, my phone buzzed, a text this time, but not from Ethan or Lily. Just a single word from a number I didn't recognize. Run! My chest tightened. I tried to dismiss it as a prank, but the pit in my stomach grew deeper. I checked my watch again. Nearly an hour had passed. The gift bags felt like dead weight. I was on the verge of giving up and heading back to Dallas when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, heart hammering. The same neighbor, the one with the Astros cap, stepped out from behind a manicured hedge, glancing nervously at the security camera above Ethan's door. "Listen, sir," he whispered. "I shouldn't be saying this, but you seem like a decent man. A year ago, the last man who visited here, he didn't make it home. The wife's father. Heart attack, they said. But he was healthy as a horse." I stared at him, cold sweat running down my spine. "You think my son, Ethan, had something to do with that?" He shrugged, fear twisting his face. "I'm just saying, things aren't what they seem. That lady, Lily, she's colder than Houston steel. Since they got rich, folks don't come around anymore. Just be careful. And if they offer you anything to eat or drink, don't touch it." He disappeared just as quickly as he'd come, leaving me alone with a mind spinning out of control. I thought of Ruth, my late wife, and how she'd always seen through people's masks. She would have trusted her gut. But what did I have now? Just doubt, regret, and a pile of unsaid words between me and my son. At that moment, the silence was broken by the smooth purr of an engine. A silver BMW pulled into the driveway, gliding up beside my battered Lincoln. For a second I didn't move. The windows were tinted, and everything about the car screamed money and success. The door opened, and Ethan stepped out. My son, older than I remembered, sharper, his hair cut stylishly, his suit impeccable. He looked successful, but his eyes darted to the neighbor's house before fixing on me. "Dad! You made it!" His smile was broad, but there was tension in his voice, a strain at the edge of his eyes. "Sorry we're late. Got caught up downtown. You know Houston traffic." I tried to return his smile, but the words of the neighbor clung to me. "No problem, son. I've been enjoying the scenery." The passenger door opened and Lily appeared. She was more glamorous than I remembered, blonde hair shining, a dress that looked like it belonged on a magazine cover. Her smile was dazzling, but something about her eyes sent a chill down my spine. "Mr. Walker," she said, coming over and giving me a gentle hug. "We're so sorry to keep you waiting. Come inside. I've made your favorite, pot roast, just like Ruth used to make." How did she know? I looked at Ethan, who shrugged with a practiced innocence. "We talk about family all the time, Dad. I wanted Lily to know all the things you love." They each took a gift bag and ushered me inside, Lily's perfume lingering in the air as we crossed the threshold. The interior was even grander than the outside, marble floors, glass everywhere, a kitchen that looked like it belonged to a celebrity chef. Everything sparkled, but it felt more like a museum than a home. As Lily led me to the kitchen, humming a tune that sounded oddly familiar, I forced myself to play along. I accepted a glass of water, pretending to drink, all while scanning the room for any sign of danger, for anything out of place. My mind replayed the neighbor's warning again and again: don't eat or drink anything they offer you. I watched Lily move around the kitchen with a practiced grace, her hands steady as she prepared the meal. Ethan chatted away about business, about their new life, about the amazing opportunities in Houston, but his voice sounded rehearsed, too polished, too eager. Every so often, Lily would glance my way, her smile perfectly controlled. "It's so wonderful to finally have you here, George. Family is everything, isn't it?" I nodded, my throat dry, watching as she reached for a bottle in a low cabinet, a bottle I recognized instantly. Potassium cyanide. The skull and crossbones glared up at me from the label. My heart nearly stopped. Lily's movements were quick, but I saw her pour a few drops into a glass of wine, swirl it gently, and set it on the table, right in front of the seat she'd reserved for me. I forced my face to remain calm, every instinct screaming at me to run, to escape. But instead I smiled, sliding into the seat and moving the wine away. "Doctor's orders," I lied. "No wine for me these days. High blood pressure." For a moment, I saw a flicker of frustration in Lily's eyes. Ethan covered for her, laughing. "No problem, Dad. More for us." Dinner passed in a haze of forced conversation. Every bite, every sip, felt like a risk, a test of my resolve. I watched every move, memorized every detail, praying for the courage to make it through the night. But deep down, I knew I was trapped. And my only hope was to survive long enough to find out the truth. As the evening wore on, I excused myself to the bathroom, locking the door and pulling out my phone. With shaking hands, I dialed 911. "My name is George Walker," I whispered. "I think my son and daughter-in-law are trying to poison me." The operator's voice was calm, reassuring, but my own hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. "Stay calm, sir. Help is on the way. Stay safe. Don't eat or drink anything. We'll be there as fast as we can." I stared at my reflection in the mirror, at the terrified old man staring back at me, and realized that for the first time in my life, I was truly alone. But I wasn't going down without a fight. I took a shaky breath, steadying myself before leaving the bathroom. I knew I had to act normal, had to pretend I didn't suspect a thing, or I might not get another chance. The hallway was lined with framed photos of Ethan and Lily, weddings, vacations and places I'd never been invited, expensive cars, fancy parties. A family built on appearances, not trust. As I walked back toward the dining room, I heard their voices, low and urgent. "Think he suspects?" Lily's voice, sharper now, stripped of its sweetness. "No," Ethan replied quickly, though there was a nervous tremor beneath his bravado. "He's old. He just looks tired." My heart hammered. I forced a smile as I entered. "Sorry about that. Old man bladder, you know how it is." They both laughed, too loudly, too eagerly. Lily rose, moving toward the kitchen island. "I made your favorite dessert, George, pecan pie. The same recipe Ruth always used." I watched her every move. She cut a generous slice and placed it in front of me, eyes glinting as she set down a fork. "You have to try it. Please." My hands trembled as I picked up the fork. Keep up the act, I told myself. I cut a tiny bite and brought it to my mouth, then, at the last second, dropped it onto my lap. "Oh, clumsy me," I chuckled, dabbing at my pants with a napkin. "I can't take me anywhere." Lily frowned, disappointment flickering across her face. Let me get you another. No, no, it's fine. I'm honestly so full from dinner. That roast was incredible, Lily. You're quite the chef. Ethan jumped in, eager to steer the conversation back to safe ground. Dad, what do you say we show you around the house? You haven't seen the upstairs yet. The view of the city at night is really something. I agreed, all the while cataloging exits, windows, escape routes. The house was stunning, glass walls, endless hallways, art worth more than my entire retirement savings. But it felt less like a home and more like a prison. At every turn, there was another locked door, another security camera blinking its red eye. When we reached the upstairs office, Ethan lingered by the window, pretending to admire the lights of Houston. You know, Dad, I never told you how much it meant to me, all those years you worked to give us a better life. I know we fought, but… He turned, and for a moment I saw the boy he'd once been, eager for approval, desperate for love. But the moment passed as quickly as it had come. I know you wanted me to be practical, but you taught me how to dream. You made all this possible. There was a rawness in his voice, a plea for understanding, but beneath it, a calculation I couldn't ignore. Downstairs, Lily was still in the kitchen, humming that familiar tune, a song Ruth used to hum on quiet Sunday mornings. The melody drifted through the house, warping into something cold and sinister. I excused myself, saying I needed to stretch my legs. Instead, I slipped outside through a side door, heart pounding, and ducked into the shadows of the backyard. The pool was lit up, water shimmering blue under the moon. I crouched behind a hedge, pulling out my phone and redialing 911. This time, my voice was steadier. I'm still at the address, I whispered. I'm outside now. Please hurry. Officers are 2 minutes away, sir. Stay on the line if you can. A movement caught my eye. Lily at the sliding glass door, scanning the yard. She stepped outside, calling sweetly, George? What did you wander off to? I didn't answer. I crept farther from the house, staying low, watching as she returned inside, frustration etched on her face. The night air was thick, cicadas singing in the distance, my own breath loud in my ears. Moments later, the flash of red and blue lights cut through the night. Police cruisers rolled silently to a stop in front of the house. Officers moved quickly, quietly, weapons drawn, not knowing if they'd find a confused old man or a crime in progress. I stood, raising my hands. I'm George Walker, I called, voice trembling. They're trying to kill me, my own son and his wife. There's poison in the kitchen. Check under the sink, brown bottle. And in the wine glass at the table. The officers moved past me, professional and fast. Through the open front door, I could see Ethan and Lily, caught mid-conversation, shock and fear flashing across their faces as police poured into the foyer. One officer gently guided me to an ambulance parked nearby. Let's get you checked out, sir. You're safe now. I slumped onto the gurney, suddenly weak with relief and heartbreak. I watched as police led Ethan and Lily away in handcuffs, both protesting their innocence, both faces twisted in rage and disbelief. How had it come to this? I wondered, staring at the house that was supposed to be a symbol of my family's success. Had I pushed Ethan too hard? Had I given him everything but the one thing he needed most, my faith in him? As the paramedics checked my vitals, I found myself thinking of Ruth. I could almost hear her voice in the warm Texas night. You did what you had to do, George. You survived. But the victory felt hollow. The next days passed in a blur, hospital beds, interviews with detectives, the endless parade of paperwork. The evidence was overwhelming. The bottle under the sink, fingerprints on the wine glass, the neighbor's testimony. The story made the local news. Houston businessman survives son's murder plot. Reporters camped outside my hospital room. Friends and family called, offering support, condolences, and questions I couldn't answer. My life, once so solid and predictable, now felt like a house built on sand. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal or the fear. It was the loss, the knowledge that the boy I'd raised was gone, replaced by a stranger in a suit, willing to kill for money and comfort. A week later, I returned to Dallas, a broken man with a new scar across my soul. The house was too quiet, Ruth's absence now joined by Ethan's. In the darkness, I found myself speaking aloud to her photo. "I'm sorry, Ruth. I tried to save him. I really did. But sometimes, love isn't enough. Sometimes, all you can do is survive." The weeks that followed felt unreal, as if I were watching someone else's tragedy play out on a TV screen. My phone rang day and night, friends, reporters, distant relatives who hadn't called in years. Each conversation ended the same way, with words of comfort I barely heard. Nothing anyone could say would change the truth. My only son had tried to end my life for the sake of money. I sat for hours in Ruth's old rocking chair, watching the Texas sun sink behind my fence, the shadows of the house growing long across the empty yard. The home felt colder now, every room echoing with memories. I kept replaying Ethan's words, searching for a moment when things could have gone differently. When had hope turned to resentment? When had ambition become poison? 2 weeks after the police arrested Ethan and Lily, a detective from Houston called me to testify before a grand jury. "The evidence is strong," Detective Ramirez told me. "But your account is the missing piece, Mr. Walker. They need to hear it from you." I agreed, though the thought of seeing Ethan in court made my stomach twist with dread. I spent the drive back to Houston staring out the train window at the fields rolling by, trying to gather the pieces of my life. The courthouse in Harris County was a gray, imposing building. Inside, the halls buzzed with lawyers, officers, and frightened families. I sat in a small waiting room, my hands shaking, as the bailiff called my name. Inside the courtroom, Ethan sat with his lawyer, head bowed, avoiding my gaze. Lily looked at me without flinching, her expression cold, almost bored. Their attorney tried to make them seem like victims, claiming I was confused, that I'd misinterpreted a loving invitation from my son. But when I took the stand, my voice was clear. I told them about the neighbor's warning, about Lily's careful preparations in the kitchen, about the poison bottle under the sink. I described how I'd watched her swirl something into my wine glass, how Ethan had pushed me to just try a sip for old time's sake. My hands didn't shake as I spoke. I was done being afraid. The jury listened in silence. The prosecutors produced the poison bottle, still half full, and the forensic experts explained its deadly effects. They found traces in both the wine and in the pecan pie. It was all there, plain as day. For a moment, Ethan looked up at me. Our eyes met, and in that instant, I saw a flash of the boy I'd raised, scared, ashamed, desperate. But then his expression hardened, and he looked away. After I stepped down, the neighbor, the man in the Astros cap, whose real name turned out to be Mike, testified about what he'd seen and heard over the last year. He spoke of Lily's father's sudden death, of whispers in the neighborhood about what went on behind those modern glass walls. The evidence was overwhelming. It took the jury less than a day to reach a decision, guilty on all counts. Attempted murder. Conspiracy. The judge sentenced both Ethan and Lily to life in prison. Reporters followed me out of the courthouse, shoving microphones in my face, snapping photos. "Mr. Walker, how does it feel to see justice done? Do you have any message for your son?" But I had nothing left to say. I left Houston that night, driving the long way back to Dallas, trying to remember the boy I'd once known. The road blurred before my eyes, memories flooding in, a baseball game in Little League, Ethan's hand in mine as we crossed a busy street, the way he'd once looked up to me like I could fix anything. But some things can't be fixed. Back home, I sold Walker Freight Solutions. There was no one left to pass it on to. The money from the sale went to a trust fund, one Ruth had always wanted to set up for underprivileged kids in Dallas. It felt right to turn something built from so much hard work and heartache into hope for someone else. But the house was harder to let go. I walked its rooms late at night, touching the worn banister, the window ledges Ruth had decorated with her favorite blue jars, the fireplace where Ethan and I used to roast marshmallows on winter nights. Each step was heavy with loss. One morning, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, seeing not just the lines of age, but the scars of a father's greatest failure. I reached for Ruth's photo, the one taken on our 30th anniversary, her eyes shining with pride and love. "I'm so sorry, Ruth," I whispered. "I tried. I really tried. But grief is a patient visitor, and it does not leave when asked." It was Mike, the neighbor, who helped me start to see a way forward. He called one afternoon, just to check in. "I never got to thank you," I told him. "You saved my life." Mike laughed, but there was sadness behind it. "Just doing what was right, George. I lost my brother to something like that years ago. I couldn't live with myself if I hadn't spoken up." We started meeting once a week for coffee at a little diner on Main Street. Two old men, talking about baseball, the weather, and the strange way life unfolds. His friendship was an anchor, a reminder that even after everything, not all was lost. Over time, I met other people, too. A retired teacher who played chess in the park. A widower who volunteered at the library. Folks who'd weathered their own storms and survived. They became my circle, my new family, not by blood, but by choice. And slowly, with each sunrise, with each shared cup of coffee, the ache in my chest eased. I found myself planting new flowers in Ruth's old garden, watching them grow in the Texas sun. I'd lost so much, but I was still alive. And as long as I was breathing, there was life to be lived. But I knew deep down that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means carrying the past with you, scars and all, and choosing to walk forward anyway. That's what Ruth would have wanted. Fall arrived in Texas like a slow exhale. The worst of the heat faded, and the golden leaves began to drift across my empty lawn. Some mornings, I would catch myself staring out the kitchen window, listening for sounds that would never return. Ethan's laughter, Ruth's gentle voice, the old familiar life that had vanished in a single terrible summer. I kept busy, because that's what people do when grief threatens to swallow them whole. I cleared out closets and boxed up Ethan's childhood mementos, trophies, school photos, his old Little League glove, still dusty from our last game of catch. I donated most things, but kept a few treasures in a cedar box, not for anyone else but me. The Dallas house, once a place of noise and warmth, became a sanctuary for memories. Sometimes, in the stillness, I heard echoes, Ruth's favorite music floating down the hall, Ethan calling out for help with his homework, the soft creak of the porch swing in the evening breeze. The ache never disappeared, but it softened at the edges, fading into something almost gentle. I threw myself into volunteer work at Ruth's old community center. Every week, I helped stock the food pantry, organize coat drives for the winter, and read stories to kids whose lives were even harder than mine. There was comfort in the simple tasks, a quiet sense of purpose that didn't ask for more than I could give. One Thursday, as I shelved canned goods alongside an old friend of Ruth's named Louise, she paused and looked at me with kind eyes. "You're doing good, George," she said softly. "I know it doesn't erase what happened, but you're building something again. Ruth would be proud." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I hope so, Louise. Some days it feels like I'm just putting one foot in front of the other." "That's enough," she said. "Some days that's all any of us can do." The grand jury trial for Ethan and Lily made national headlines for a few days, and the phone rang with offers for interviews, documentaries, even a book. I turned them all down. I didn't want to be famous for surviving my own family. I wanted to move forward, quietly, and on my own terms. Mike, the neighbor from Houston, called sometimes to check in. We talked about baseball, the Astros and the Rangers, and sometimes, rarely, we talked about forgiveness. "Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive him?" he asked one night. I thought about it for a long moment. Maybe someday. But not for what he did. For what he lost. For the life he threw away. I'll never understand how money became worth more than family to him. Mike sighed. Some people lose their way, George. That doesn't mean you did. I tried to believe that. On the anniversary of Ruth's death, I visited her grave with a single white rose and sat beside her for hours, telling her everything that had happened. The words came slowly at first, but as the autumn wind stirred the branches above, my voice grew steady. I kept my promise, Ruth. I watched over Ethan as best I could. I tried to give him everything, but maybe I gave too much, or not enough of what mattered. The cemetery was peaceful, the city noises distant, softened by distance and memory. For the first time, I let myself cry, not just for Ruth, but for Ethan, for Lily, for the family that would never be whole again. But I left the cemetery lighter, as if I'd left some of my pain behind. Winter in Dallas is short, but sharp. One December night, I found myself driving past the old high school where Ethan played football. The stadium lights glowed in the distance, and I pulled over, parking at the edge of the lot. The field was empty, but the echoes were there, crowds cheering, the band playing, Ruth's laughter as she waved a homemade sign for Ethan. I sat in the cold car and let the memories come, not to hurt me, but to remind me that there had been good times, too. That a life isn't defined only by its ending. In the new year, I began speaking at the community center's support group for parents, fathers and mothers struggling with their own losses, with children lost to addiction, crime, or tragedy. I told my story honestly, not as a victim, but as someone who'd walked through fire and kept walking. You can't change the past, I would say, but you can change how you carry it. You can build something new, even from broken pieces. One young man, his eyes red-rimmed, stopped me after a meeting. How do you keep going? How do you live with the memories? I thought about Ruth, about Mike, about the people who had reached out when I was at my lowest. You let people help you, I said. You show up, even when it hurts. And you look for moments of grace, small kindnesses, a smile, a cup of coffee with a friend. That's how you start. He nodded, and for the first time, I saw hope flicker in his eyes. That night, I sat on my porch as the first hints of spring touched the air, watching the world begin to wake up again. The garden Ruth had planted showed the first signs of life, daffodils poking through the soil, the promise of new beginnings in every green shoot. I closed my eyes and listened to the quiet, the world humming with possibility. For the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to dream, not of the past, but of a future still worth living. Early spring brought unexpected news. I was sorting through the mail, bills, advertisements, a note from the community center, when I noticed an envelope with a familiar, slanted handwriting. My heart thudded as I turned it over and saw the return address, Harris County Correctional Facility. It was from Ethan. For a long moment, I stood in the hallway, sunlight pooling at my feet, unable to move. My first instinct was to throw the letter away, unopened, to protect myself from old wounds. But something, curiosity, grief, hope, made me tear it open. Dad, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if you'll read this. But I'm writing anyway because the days here are long, and the nights are worse, and I keep thinking about all the things I never said. I know what I did can't be undone. I know I ruined everything. They tell me I should try to make peace with the past, but every time I close my eyes, I see your face the day they put me in those handcuffs. I hear Mom's voice in my head, telling me to do the right thing even now. I wanted things to be different, Dad. I wanted to make you proud. But somewhere along the way, I got lost. I thought money would fix everything, that success would make you finally see me as your equal. Instead, I became the worst version of myself. I'm sorry. For everything. For what I did, for how I hurt you, for all the years I wasted being angry instead of grateful. I wish I could take it back, but all I can do now is say I'm sorry and hope, maybe someday, you'll remember the boy I used to be. I hope you're okay. I hope you found some peace. Ethan. I read the letter twice, my hands shaking, my eyes blurring with tears I thought I'd left behind. The words were raw, stripped of bravado, written by someone who had finally realized the price of his mistakes. I didn't know what to feel: anger, relief, heartbreak, or a strange, unwanted hope. For days, I kept the letter folded in my pocket, running my thumb over Ethan's signature as if it might conjure back the son I'd lost. Mike, my neighbor turned friend, noticed the change in me. "You seem a little off, George," he said one afternoon at the diner. "Everything okay?" I handed him the letter without a word. He read it carefully, then handed it back, his eyes kind. "Sounds like he's finally facing the truth," Mike said. "Doesn't mean you have to forgive him. But maybe it's a start." "Maybe," I said quietly. "But how do you forgive something like this?" Mike shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe you start by forgiving yourself." That night I sat at my kitchen table, pen in hand, and tried to write Ethan back. The words wouldn't come. Every sentence felt either too harsh or too soft, too final or too hopeful. I wanted to say that I missed him, that I loved him, that nothing could ever fully erase the years we'd shared before greed took over. But I also wanted him to understand the depth of my pain, the betrayal that had changed both our lives forever. I settled for honesty. "Ethan, I got your letter. I've read it more times than I can count. I won't pretend that things can ever go back to the way they were, but I'm glad you wrote. I hope you're telling the truth about wanting to change. You hurt me more than I can say. I've lost sleep, lost faith, lost the family your mother and I tried so hard to build. But I don't want hate to be the last thing I feel for you. There was a time when you were my whole world, son. I remember that boy every day. If you want to try and become him again, if you want to find a way back to decency, I hope you do. That's all I have left to hope for. Take care of yourself. Dad." I mailed the letter the next morning, unsure if it was an ending or a beginning. Days slipped by, slow and gentle. The world outside bloomed with new life: birds singing at dawn, kids riding bikes, the garden Ruth planted returning to color. I tended the roses, repaired the old fence, and found small peace in each task. It wasn't happiness, not quite, but it was enough. Sometimes, I would sit on the porch in the cool evening air and let myself remember Ethan as he was, chasing fireflies in the backyard, grinning wide as Ruth called him inside for dinner, his arms thrown around my neck after a scraped knee. I let the old memories comfort me, rather than haunt me. One day in May, as I watered the flowers, a young man approached the gate. He looked nervous, clutching a paper bag in one hand. I recognized him from the community center, one of the teens I'd helped during a rough patch. "Mr. Walker?" he said, shifting from foot to foot. "I know this is weird, but I just wanted to say thanks. You helped me when I didn't have anywhere to go. You and your wife, well, I remember her too. She used to give out those cookies at Thanksgiving." I smiled, swallowing the lump in my throat. "You're welcome, son. How are you doing?" He grinned, shy but proud. "Better. Got a job. Trying to stay out of trouble." We talked for a while about life, mistakes, second chances. As he left, he paused, looking back. "You're a good man, Mr. Walker. I hope your son knows that, too." When he was gone, I sat on the porch and let the tears fall, not for what I'd lost, but for what I'd managed to hold on to, the ability to care, to help, to forgive, even in pieces. That night, I dreamed of Ruth and Ethan, sitting together at our old dinner table, the house filled with laughter and light. For a moment, I was home again. And for the first time, I woke up feeling that forgiveness, however slow, however imperfect, might finally be possible. Summer arrived, and with it a quiet sense of acceptance. Life didn't rush me forward. Instead, it gently carried me, day by day, toward a new kind of peace. I still missed Ruth, still thought of Ethan every time I saw a father and son sharing a meal at the diner, but the old sharp pain dulled into something bittersweet. I kept volunteering at the community center, helping with repairs, teaching kids how to throw a baseball, sometimes just listening to the stories that poured out when someone finally felt safe. I started a scholarship fund in Ruth's name, for any young person who needed a helping hand toward college, or just a chance to start over. It felt right, turning loss into something living and good. Letters from Ethan came once a month now. He wrote about the men he'd met inside, men broken in different ways, some beyond repair, others hungry for a second chance. He worked in the prison library, spent his days reading and writing, helping others learn to read as well. There was no self-pity in his words anymore. Instead, there was humility, a slow understanding of what he'd lost, and a quiet hope that he might someday be worthy of forgiveness. In one letter he wrote, "Dad, I know I'll never be free the way I once was, but I want to make something of what's left. I'm teaching guys in here who never finished high school. For the first time, I feel like I'm helping instead of hurting. I wish I could say all the right things, but mostly I wish I'd listened to you and Mom before it was too late. Thank you for writing me back. It matters more than I can say." I replied, sometimes with stories from home, sometimes just a few lines of encouragement. Our correspondence was awkward at first, then steadier, building something that felt like a bridge, fragile, but real. Each time his letter arrived, I was reminded that even the worst mistakes don't have to be the end of everything. That July, the community center threw a picnic for all the families they'd helped during the year. Louise insisted I come and even gave me the job of grilling hamburgers, a role Ruth would have found hilarious given my long-standing feud with the charcoal grill. Kids darted between picnic tables, music drifted from a portable speaker, and for a few hours the world seemed brighter. One of the teens I'd mentored, Marcus, stopped by with his new baby daughter in his arms. "Mr. Walker, I wanted you to meet Grace," he said, beaming. "I named her after your wife. She helped me turn my life around." I blinked back tears, gently touching the baby's tiny hand. "She would have loved that, Marcus. She really would." As the sun set and the party wound down, I sat alone for a moment beneath the oak trees, feeling Ruth's presence all around me. I thought of the long road behind, of mistakes and miracles, heartbreak and healing. I realized then that while the past would always be part of me, it didn't have to define the rest of my days. On Ethan's birthday, I mailed him a photo of the garden in full bloom. I wrote, "You're still my son. I hope you find the good in every day, even the hardest ones. Ruth always said forgiveness is a gift you give yourself." I think she was right. That fall, I decided to downsize and move to a small apartment closer to the center, where I could be useful and surrounded by the people who'd become family. I sold the old house, closing a chapter, but not erasing it. Before I left, I walked through every room one last time, whispering goodbye, feeling Ruth's spirit blessing me with every step. In my new place, life was simpler, but fuller. I found comfort in routine, morning walks, afternoons spent tutoring at the library, coffee with Mike, laughter with friends who understood loss and survival. Every so often, I'd catch myself smiling for no reason at all, surprised at the resilience of the human heart. On the anniversary of Ethan's sentencing, I received a card from him. No long letter. Just a single line. "Thank you for giving me the chance to be better, Dad. I love you." I pinned the card above my desk, next to Ruth's photograph and the first drawing Ethan ever made as a child, a lopsided family portrait, all bright colors and happy faces. The future would always carry shadows. But as I looked out the window at the city alive with possibility, I understood at last, even after the worst storms, the sun can rise again. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means finding hope, and choosing, day after day, to believe in the possibility of something good. My story didn't end the day I almost lost everything. It began again, in the slow rebuilding, in forgiveness, in every act of kindness I could offer. It continued in the lives I touched, and in the memory of the love that had shaped me. As Ruth once told me, love is what remains when everything else falls away. I finally understood. And with that, I stepped into each new day, not with bitterness, but with hope.